Commander Blake stood in the observation deck of the human transport ship, watching the Galactic Council chambers grow larger as they approached. The massive structure floated in space like a city built from crystal and metal. It had been home to elder alien species for thousands of years, felt the weight of what he was about to do. In his hands was data that could change everything. The plague spreading through the outer rim was real. It was deadly. And no one in the council wanted to listen to what humanity had to say. Blake was a military commander with 30 years of service. He had seen human ships fight in wars across the galaxy. He had seen humans die for missions that mattered. But he had never felt fear like this. Not fear of combat or death, but fear that the wrong decision by powerful people could doom billions of lives. The data in his ship's computers showed planets reduced to ash, entire civilizations gone, nothing left but dust and silence. The transport docked at the council chambers. Blake walked through the corridors with Captain Lisa Warren at his side. Lisa had served with for 15 years. She was the best tactical officer in the human fleet. Her face was hard and serious as they walked. Around them, alien beings moved through the halls. Some were tall and thin with skin like crystal. Others were massive creatures that barely fit through the doorways. A few were small enough to float above the ground. All of them looked at the humans with something between curiosity and disinterest. The council chamber itself was enormous. It rose like a cathedral, with seats arranged in a circle for representatives of the elder species. The representative sat at the highest point. He was ancient and moved slowly, as if his body was made of stone and starlight mixed together. The had ruled parts of the galaxy for more than 2 million years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They believed they had seen everything. They believed nothing could surprise them anymore. Blake stepped forward and began to speak. His voice was calm and clear. He presented the data on screens that filled the chamber walls. He showed images of dead worlds. He showed graphs of how fast the plague was spreading. He showed calculations of how many lives would be lost if nothing was done. The plague was like a living thing, he explained. It spread from system to system. It consumed entire civilizations, and it seemed to be growing stronger. The representative listened without moving. When finished, the ancient being spoke. His voice was like the sound of mountains grinding together. They said that humans were young and prone to panic. They saw danger everywhere because they were not evolved enough to understand the universe properly. The plague, they said, was likely just a natural phenomenon. Civilizations rose and fell. This was the way of things. There was no reason for the council to act on the fears of an immature species. Other representatives began to speak. A tall crystalline being called the, or agreed with the, or said that humans were known to be emotional and aggressive. They made poor decisions when they were afraid. The council should not let human fear drive galactic policy. An ancient race called the X remained silent, but their body language showed they agreed. Blake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He tried again. He explained that the data came from human scientists who had studied the plague for months. He showed evidence that other civilizations had already been touched by this threat. But the council was not listening anymore. The vote was taken quickly. The council decided to monitor the situation but take no action. They dismissed Blake and Captain Lisa Warren without another word. Walked back through the corridors of the council chambers with Lisa beside him. Neither of them spoke until they were back on their ship. In the command center, looked at the star charts on the screens. Dozens of systems were already marked as dead or dying. More would be lost every day that the council did nothing. Lisa Warren stood next to and spoke her first words since they had entered the council chambers. She said, "Sir, they will not help us." Blake looked at her and nodded. He said, "I know." He turned to look at the star charts again. "And that means we will have to save ourselves. It is time to defy orders and do what is right. We will leave for the outer rim immediately. We will find the source of this plague and we will stop it." Lisa Warren did not question the order. She had known this was coming. She had seen it in his eyes during the council meeting. She turned to the communications officer and began giving orders. The ship would prepare to leave in 1 hour. All non-essential personnel would be transported to a nearby station. The best scientists on board, including Dr. Grant, would prepare their research equipment. Blake looked out at the stars through the observation deck. Somewhere out there, billions of lives hung in the balance. The Council had chosen to ignore the danger. They had chosen to believe that the problem would go away. They were wrong, and Blake would make sure that the galaxy understood what the elder species had refused to see. Sometimes, it took the anger of those who were called too young and too emotional to save those who were called too wise and too powerful to act. The human ship began to move away from the council chambers. Behind them, the crystal and metal structure grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of them lay the darkness of the outer rim and the unknown horrors that waited there. Blake stood at the command chair and made his decision. Humanity would prove to the galaxy what they were truly made of. They would do what the elder species would not. And when it was over, everything would change. The research ship descended toward the collective, or what remained of it. Below them was a planet that had once been green and alive. Now it was gray and dead. No city stood on the surface. No lights came from the night side. The scanners showed no biological life at all. Not a single organism larger than bacteria remained on this world. Dr. Grant stood in the science center, looking at the data flowing across his screens. He had studied biology and genetics for his entire career. He had helped develop weapons that could target specific pathogens. He had trained to understand how disease moved through populations, but nothing in his training had prepared him for what he was seeing on Prime. The plague was not a normal disease. It did not kill in the way that infections usually killed. It did not attack the immune system or destroy tissue. Instead, it seemed to unmake everything it touched at a molecular level. Cells did not simply die. They transformed into something else. The data showed that the plague was actually rewriting genetic material. It was turning living organisms into dust in a matter of days. Blake stood next to and looked at the same screens. He asked what thought could kill something like that. Did not answer right away. Instead, he asked to follow him to the medical lab. There showed him samples he had collected from the plague debris. He explained that the plague had no known weaknesses. Every conventional weapon they had tried on it, the plague had adapted. Every biological countermeasure had failed. The plague seemed to learn and change every time it was attacked. This was not random mutation, said. This was intelligent design. Someone had created this thing on purpose. Someone had made it to be nearly unstoppable, and then someone had either lost control of it or let it loose on purpose. Captain Lisa Warren was in the tactical room with her officers. She was studying the spread pattern of the plague across the outer rim systems. What she found made her angry. The plague had not spread randomly. It had moved from system to system in a pattern that suggested direction. Someone or something was guiding it. But more importantly, Lisa found old records in the damaged archives they recovered. The records came from 300 years ago. They mentioned the plague. They mentioned that the elder species knew about it. The elder species had known, they had always known, and they had done nothing. Lisa brought this information to Blake in his command center. She showed him the records. They were old and damaged, but the meaning was clear. The other elder races had studied the plague centuries ago. They had found that it could not be stopped by conventional means, so they had simply chosen to ignore it. They had hoped it would stay confined to certain regions of space. They had decided that the problem was not their responsibility. Felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. The elder species had not dismissed his warnings because they did not believe him. They had dismissed him because they already knew he was right. They had simply decided that humanity's concerns did not matter. They believed their own worlds were safe, and they cared nothing for the outer rim civilizations that were dying. A new scan showed movement. Another system was being consumed by the plague. This time received a distress signal from the people. They had a population of 40 million. They were asking for help. They were begging for help. Their messages were desperate and filled with fear. By the time the signal reached ship, they were already gone. The plague had taken them. Blake made a decision. He sent a message back to the Galactic Council. He told them that humanity was continuing its investigation into the plague. He told them that they would find a solution. He told them that humanity would not abandon the dying systems of the Outer Rim, no matter what the Council decided. The response came back quickly. The Council declared that Blake was acting against their orders. They said he had no authority to continue this mission. They ordered him to return to human space immediately and submit himself for trial. A third message came from the Council, but this one was different. The Council announced to all species in the galaxy that a new plague had been discovered in the Outer Rim. They recommended that all civilizations prepare for evacuation from that region of space. They did not recommend fighting the plague. They did not recommend finding a cure. They simply recommended giving up. The message caused panic across thousands of worlds. Civilizations began to flee. Some species abandoned entire planets that had been home to their people for millions of years. The chaos was enormous and terrible. People died in the rush to escape. Ships crashed trying to outrun the plague, and still the plague spread. Blake stood on the observation deck with Dr. Grant and Captain Lisa Warren. Below them, another dead world passed by. Spoke first. He said that the plague was accelerating. It was spreading faster than before. If they did not find the source and shut it down in the next few months, it would consume the entire Outer Rim and start moving toward the inner galaxy. Lisa Warren added that the elder species were fools. They believed they could run far enough and fast enough, but the plague would follow. It would always follow. The only way to stop it was to find it and destroy it at its source. Blake looked at his two officers and nodded. He said, "Then that is what we will do. We will find the source of this plague, no matter where it is. We will find it and we will kill it. And the galaxy will understand why they should have listened to humans in the first place." The ship changed course and moved deeper into the Outer Rim. Behind them, the warnings from the Galactic Council meant nothing. Ahead of them lay danger and death. But Blake did not hesitate. Humanity had been dismissed and ignored. Now it was time to prove what that anger, that refusal to accept defeat, could truly accomplish. The trail led them to a system that did not appear on any modern star charts. It was hidden behind a nebula so thick that sensors could barely penetrate it. Blake's team had to navigate using old records they found in the damaged archives. These records came from before the elder species had deliberately tried to forget this place existed. The origin world was small and cold. Its atmosphere was toxic. Its surface was covered in structures that had been abandoned for millions of years. These were not the buildings of the civilization that the plague had destroyed. These were older, much older. They belonged to a race that had died long before they became a galactic power. Dr. Grant led the first exploration team down to the surface. He wore a heavy suit that protected him from the poison in the air. 2 human scientists came with him, and 1 scientist from a younger alien species called the named I had joined mission secretly. I represented a generation of younger aliens who did not believe in hiding from problems. They wanted to help, even if it meant going against the elder species. Inside the ancient structures, they found laboratories. Some had been sealed for so long that the equipment was still intact, moved carefully through the rooms, collecting samples and scanning everything. The data he gathered told a story of ancient science beyond anything the modern galaxy possessed. These builders had understood biology at a level that current science had not reached. And then found the chamber. It was at the center of the complex, protected by barriers that had held for millions of years. Inside was a machine that looked almost alive. It was grown rather than built, made from biological material that had been hardened and shaped into incredible forms. And it was still running, still creating, still releasing the plague into the universe. Called Blake and reported what he had found, made the decision immediately. A strike team would be assembled. They would land on the origin world and attempt to shut down the plague factory. It was a suicide mission. The radiation levels near the machine were beyond fatal. No living creature could approach it without dying in moments, but it had to be done. Lisa Warren volunteered to lead the team. 12 human soldiers came with her, each one trained and ready to die for a mission they believed in. Grant came as well, because he was the only one who understood the machine's design well enough to shut it down. 2 more scientists came, and 1 representative each from 4 younger alien species. They were all willing to throw away their lives to save the galaxy. When word reached the Galactic Council, the response was immediate and harsh. Blake was formally stripped of his rank and authority. The Council declared him a war criminal for attempting a mission without permission. They said that any being who helped him would face exile from civilized space. They broadcast this message to all species in the galaxy. But the broadcast had an unexpected effect. When young species heard that the elder powers had declared humans willing to die for others to be criminals, they began to change their minds. Young military officers from a dozen different races started moving their ships toward the outer rim. They came to help Blake, even though helping him would cost them everything. Lisa Warren's strike team landed in a shuttle that had been stripped of all unnecessary equipment to carry more shielding. The moment they left the shuttle, the radiation began to burn them. Their suits protected them, but only for a short time. They had perhaps 10 minutes before the radiation would penetrate their protection and start to kill them. The team moved fast. Lisa pushed through the burning pain in her chest. Behind her, the soldiers moved with perfect discipline. They had trained for impossible missions before, but this was different. This was not training. This was the moment where everything they were, everything humans could be, was being tested against the fundamental laws of physics and biology. Grant reached the machine's control center. His suit was damaged. His whole body was burning with radiation poisoning, but his hands were steady as he interfaced with the ancient control systems. The data flowed into his mind and he understood. The machine was not malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it had been designed to do millions of years ago. Someone had created this thing to cleanse the galaxy of a specific enemy, and then something had gone wrong. The creators had died. The machine had kept running. It had started targeting everything. The machine could be shut down, could see how, but the override required a sacrifice. Someone had to stay inside the core chamber while the shutdown sequence ran. Someone had to hold the system steady while the machine tore itself apart. That someone would not survive. Looked back at Lisa Warren. Lisa nodded. She understood, turned back to the machine and initiated the sequence. Alarms began to sound. The machine started to shake, and Grant held steady at his position, accepting the radiation poisoning and the pain, knowing that he was buying the galaxy a future. Lisa grabbed and pulled him back. They had 10 seconds before the core would become completely unstable. The team ran for the shuttle. Behind them, the machine began to collapse. The plague that had spread across the outer rim like a living shadow began to die. Systems that had been dead started to fall silent, but it was the silence of ending, not continuation. The shuttle lifted off. Lisa held in her arms as they rose away from the origin world. They could see the machine collapse completely behind them. Then the planet itself began to crack and break apart. Whatever power had kept it stable for millions of years was failing now. The world fell to pieces. But the plague was dying. Across the outer rim, the thing that had consumed billions of lives began to wither and fade. The spreading stopped. The transformation of living things into dust began to reverse. Planets that had seemed lost forever began to show signs of recovery. The oldest threat in the galaxy, the one the elder species had been too afraid to face, was finally being destroyed. Blake watched from his command center as reports came in from across human space. Other human ships were already moving into the outer rim systems. They were not going to conquer. They were not going to take advantage of the chaos. They were going to help. They were going to begin the work of healing and rebuilding. Every human captain, every human soldier, every human citizen who heard what Lisa Warren's team had done wanted to help. Humanity was showing the galaxy what it meant to refuse to accept the unacceptable. The message came through the communication system at the exact moment when everything was falling apart. Lisa Warren's voice was broken and barely audible. She said, "We have the override, initiating shutdown." But then the signal became chaos. Static and broken noise filled the speakers. Blake waited. Everyone on his bridge waited. Seconds felt like years. Then Lisa Warren's voice came back through the static. "Shutdown sequence is running. The plague is dying, but we are not going to make it out. The radiation is too much, is already down. We are all going down. Tell the galaxy that humans came when no one else would. Tell them that we did not run. Tell them that we stayed. This is Captain Lisa Warren. The mission is complete. Humanity sends its last message." The communication cut out. Blake stood frozen at his command station. Around him, his crew sat in shocked silence. Lisa Warren and her entire team were gone. 20 human soldiers and allied scientists, dead to save billions of lives. The plague was dying, but the cost was heavy. The cost was everything they had offered. But Blake did not hesitate. He turned to his communications officer and gave an order. He said, "Send our rescue teams to the origin world immediately, and then alert all human ships in the outer rim. Every rescue operation, every medical team, every vessel that can help is to move into the plague zones. We are going to bring our people home." The rescue ships were already lifting off when Blake made his next decision. He knew that Lisa Warren and the others were probably already dead. The radiation poisoning was too severe. No human could survive those levels for more than a few minutes. But Blake had always been the kind of commander who did not leave his people behind. He moved to the pilot's seat and began taking control of the rescue ship personally. His second officer, a woman named Tors, tried to stop him. She said that he was the commander. He could not risk his life. If he died, the mission fell apart. But Blake was not the same man who had entered the Galactic Council chamber weeks before. He had seen the elder species choose inaction while billions died. He had watched humanity step forward to do the impossible. He had ordered friends and soldiers to their deaths for a mission they all believed in. Blake said to that Lisa Warren did not hesitate when he asked her to lead a suicide mission. 12 human soldiers did not hesitate. Grant had held his position in a radiation chamber while his body was destroyed from inside. Blake would not hesitate to try to save them, even if it was almost certainly too late. He took the rescue ship and flew directly into the radiation zone. Behind him, human soldiers and allied fighters followed in their own ships. The radiation tore at the hull. Alarms screamed. But Blake did not turn back. He kept the ship moving forward. He kept pushing toward the coordinates where the shuttle had been. And then he saw it. The shuttle was still there, buried under rubble from the collapsing structures. It was damaged but not destroyed. Blake landed the rescue ship beside the shuttle and ran to get inside. What he found was a nightmare. 12 soldiers lay on the ground, their bodies covered in radiation burns. Grant was in the back, still conscious but barely. Lisa Warren was at the pilot's seat, her hand holding the controls steady even though she was in obvious agony. Lisa looked at Blake and tried to smile. She said, "Hello, sir. We were hoping you would send a rescue." Blake did not smile. He said, "Get them all on my ship. Now, move fast. The radiation is not going to let us stay here long." The rescue operation took 4 minutes. 4 minutes that felt like an eternity while the radiation meter climbed higher and higher. Human soldiers and allied warriors worked side by side, carrying the dying and the already dead into the rescue ship. Blake carried Lisa Warren himself. She was light in his arms, her body burned and broken, but her eyes were still fierce and alive. They got back into the rescue ship. Blake hit the accelerator and pulled away from the origin world. Behind them, the world continued to collapse. The machine was fully destroyed now. The plague was no longer spreading anywhere in the galaxy, but the cost had been paid in blood and sacrifice. As the rescue ship climbed toward orbit, the medical teams began working. Most of the soldiers were dead before they reached the medical bay. Grant lasted 3 hours before his organs failed. The radiation had done too much damage, but Lisa Warren, stubborn and fierce even in death, held on. She held on long enough to give Blake a message. She said, "We did it. We showed them what we are. We showed the galaxy that humans do not give up. That is all that mattered." Then Lisa Warren closed her eyes and died. Blake stood over Lisa's body in the medical bay. He did not cry. He did not show any emotion. He simply looked at the woman who had been his friend and his officer and his comrade for so many years, and he made a promise to her body. He promised that the galaxy would know what she had done. The galaxy would understand the sacrifice. The galaxy would understand what humans truly were. As he left the medical bay, Blake received reports from the outer rim. The plague had completely stopped spreading. Systems that had been consumed were already showing signs of recovery. The biological processes that the plague had started were revering. Life was returning to worlds that had seemed dead forever. But more importantly, the reports showed that human ships from across the galaxy were pouring into the outer rim. They came from every human colony, every human settlement, every human world. They came with medical equipment and rescue teams and supplies. They came to help civilizations that were not their own. They came to rebuild what had been destroyed. They came because that was what humans did. They came because they refused to accept that some suffering was too far away to matter. Blake looked at the star charts showing all the human vessels moving into the outer rim. He thought about Lisa Warren. He thought about Grant. He thought about the 12 soldiers who had walked into radiation chambers knowing they would not walk out. And he understood something that the elder species would never understand. This was not anger. This was not recklessness. This was what happened when a species decided that the lives of strangers were worth dying for. This was the true strength of humanity. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Every representative from every species was present. Some came because they were forced to attend. Others came because they wanted to see what would happen to the human commander who had their orders and destroyed their plans. They sat in the highest seat, ancient and unmoved by everything that had happened. Blake walked into the chamber alone. He was no longer a commander in the human military. The council had removed his rank months ago. He was a fugitive, according to the official records of the elder species. But he was also the man whose actions had saved the entire galaxy from a plague that had been consuming it for millions of years. They spoke first. The ancient being said that Blake had disobeyed direct orders. He had risked galactic security. He had sent soldiers and allied species into a situation that was far too dangerous. The plague factory had been better left untouched, they said. It would have been contained eventually. Humanity had acted with recklessness and anger, typical of a young species that did not understand how to think strategically. But before they could continue, a younger representative stood up. He was from the species. His name was Commander I, the same who had helped Lisa Warren's strike team. I said that everything they claimed was a lie. The plague factory would not have been contained. The elder species had known that. They had studied the plague for 300 years and found no way to stop it. They had chosen to hide and hope. They had chosen to let billions die rather than risk their own safety. I continued speaking. He said that every young species in the galaxy had been watching what happened. They had seen the elder powers declare humans criminals for trying to save lives. They had seen Blake and Lisa Warren and Grant sacrifice everything to do what was right. And they had decided that they no longer trusted the Galactic Council. I said that if the Council tried to punish Blake, the younger species would withdraw from the Council completely. They would form their own alliance. They would rebuild the galaxy without the guidance of the elder powers. Other younger representatives began to stand up. One by one, they spoke. They came from species that had been in the outer rim when the plague was spreading. They came from civilizations that had lost millions or billions of their people. They spoke about the human rescue ships that had come to help them. They spoke about how humans had chosen to help even when they received nothing in return. They spoke about how the elder species had abandoned them, and the younger species, working with humanity, had saved them. The elder species began to argue among themselves. A representative from the or said that the and other young species were making a mistake. Without the guidance of the elder powers, they would fail. They would destroy themselves. But the representative answered that they had already failed. The elder species had failed. They had sat in their safe systems while others died. That was not guidance. That was cowardice. They did something unexpected. The ancient being stood up and moved closer to Blake. The huge alien looked down at the human commander. Everyone in the chamber fell silent. They had not stood for a public meeting in more than 10,000 years. This was a sign that something important was about to happen. They spoke slowly. He said that he had been wrong. The humans had shown something that the elder species had forgotten how to show. They had shown that lives mattered more than safety. They had shown that strangers were worth dying for. They said that humans were not reckless or angry in the way that the elder species meant those words. Humans were something else entirely. They were beings who would accept suffering and death to protect those who could not protect themselves. They said that this was strength. This was real strength, not the strength of advanced weapons or ancient knowledge or safe walls built by the elder species. Real strength was in the willingness to sacrifice. Real strength was in the refusal to accept that some suffering was too far away to matter. Then they did something that shocked the entire galaxy. He bowed. The ancient being who had ruled for millions of years bowed to Blake. One by one, other elder representatives bowed as well. Some did it with anger in their hearts. Some did it with genuine respect. But they all bowed. Blake looked at the bowing aliens and felt nothing. He did not feel pride. He did not feel victory. He only felt the weight of the people he had lost. Lisa Warren, who had been his friend. Grant, who had understood the machine and died holding it together. The 12 soldiers who had walked into impossible circumstances knowing they would not come back. Blake was asked to speak. He said that he would not accept any title or honor. Instead, he wanted to propose something new. He proposed that the Galactic Council create a joint military and humanitarian force. This force would include species from all levels of development. Its purpose would be to respond to crises faster than the Council could meet and vote. Its purpose would be to help civilizations that were in danger, no matter how far away they were. The Council debated this proposal for hours. Some elder species opposed it. They said it would lead to chaos and disorder. But the younger species pushed for it, and Blake made it clear that human forces would participate in this new alliance, with or without the Council's approval. Eventually, the Council accepted. They created the Rapid Response Alliance and Blake was asked to lead it. But Blake had other plans. He asked for command to pass to Captain Torres, a human who had served with honor and understood what was needed. He said that he was stepping down from all military duties. He would return to his home world and live quietly. He had done what needed to be done. Torres accepted the command. Soon, human ships were working side by side with younger alien species on rescue and relief missions across the galaxy. The old assumption that age meant wisdom began to fade. The new assumption was that courage and sacrifice mattered more than ancient knowledge. 3 years after Blake stepped down, the first monument was built in the Outer Rim. It was dedicated to Captain Lisa Warren and Dr. Grant and the soldiers who had died to save the galaxy. The monument was not made by humans alone. It was built by every species that had been in the Outer Rim when the plague was spreading. Each species contributed something. Each species helped honor those who had given their lives. Blake stood in front of the monument and read the words carved into its stone. It said, "Here stand those who came when no one else would. Here stand those who refused to accept the unacceptable. Here stand those who prove that strength is found not in the power to destroy, but in the willingness to sacrifice. Here stand the humans and their allies. Here stand the angry ones who loved more than they hated." Blake touched the stone and whispered a prayer for Lisa Warren, for Grant, for all those who had died believing that the lives of strangers were worth saving, and he understood what the galaxy was finally learning. It was not anger that had driven humans to do the impossible. It was something far more powerful. It was a refusal to let suffering go unanswered. It was a belief that no one should die alone. It was a strength that the elder species had forgotten how to possess. And now, finally, the galaxy understood. The so-called angry humans had not come to destroy, they had come to save, and that made all the difference.